Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're tackling a really interesting question. Why is TSMC, one of the world's leading semiconductor companies, struggling to start operations in the US but thriving in Japan? First, let's talk about TSMC. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, is a giant in the tech world. They make the chips that power everything from your smartphone to advanced computers and even cars. Without these chips, our modern gadgets simply wouldn't work. Now, why does this matter? Well, semiconductors are like the backbone of all modern electronics. If there's a disruption in chip production, it can create a ripple effect, impacting industries worldwide. Think of it like a domino effect. One piece falls, and the rest follow. For instance, a chip shortage can slow down car manufacturing or delay new tech product launches. So, why is TSMC finding it tough in the US but managing well in Japan? It turns out, it's a mix of regulatory hurdles, supply chain issues, workforce challenges, and cost differences. Plus, Japan has rolled out the red carpet with incentives and support, making it easier for TSMC to get started there. Let's take a step back and get a bit of background on TSMC. TSMC, or Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, started in 1987. It's like the unseen force behind our tech gadgets. TSMC doesn't make its own branded products but instead manufactures chips for other companies. This model has made them a powerhouse in the tech industry. Imagine the world of tech as a giant puzzle. TSMC makes the critical pieces that fit into almost every device we use. They produce chips for big names like Apple, AMD, and Nvidia. Essentially, TSMC's technology forms the brain of our devices, making them smart and functional. Given their critical role, TSMC's chips are in high demand globally. This brings us to their expansion plans. To keep up with the increasing demand and to spread their risk, TSMC decided to build manufacturing plants outside Taiwan. They've set their sights on the US and Japan, among other places. In the US, TSMC is building a massive plant in Arizona. However, they've hit a few bumps in the road, like regulatory delays and issues finding skilled workers. Despite these challenges, TSMC is committed to making it work, with production expected to start in 2025. Japan, on the other hand, has been smoother sailing. TSMC's first plant in Kumamoto has already started operations. Japan has been very welcoming, offering strong government support and incentives. The existing tech ecosystem in Japan, with plenty of skilled workers and established supply chains, makes it easier for TSMC to hit the ground running. Alright, let's talk about the hurdles TSMC is facing in the US when it comes to regulations and permits. Setting up a semiconductor plant in the US isn't as simple as just buying land and starting construction. It's like trying to navigate a maze, with countless approvals needed from federal, state, and local authorities. Imagine the bureaucratic process as a series of checkpoints. Each checkpoint requires detailed paperwork, inspections, and approvals. For TSMC's Arizona plant, this has meant dealing with environmental regulations, zoning laws, and labor standards. Each step can take months, if not years, to complete. This has slowed down their progress significantly. Now, let's contrast this with Japan. In Japan, TSMC's experience has been much more streamlined. The Japanese government has rolled out the red carpet, offering strong support and incentives. Think of it like a fast-track lane at the airport. The paperwork and approvals are still there, but they're processed much quicker. Visualize government officials and TSMC executives working closely together, smoothing out the process. This cooperation has allowed TSMC's plant in Kumamoto to start operations without the same delays faced in the US. The Japanese government's proactive approach and established tech ecosystem have made it much easier for TSMC to get up and running. Let's talk about the supply chain and infrastructure challenges TSMC faces in the US. Picture this: setting up a semiconductor plant isn't just about building the factory itself. It's also about having a network of suppliers and support systems in place. In the US, this network is still developing, which creates some big hurdles for TSMC. Imagine trying to bake a cake but having to order each ingredient from a different store that's miles apart. That's kind of what TSMC is dealing with in the US. The country doesn't have an established semiconductor supply chain like Taiwan or Japan. This means TSMC has to invest a lot more time and effort into sourcing materials and equipment and finding local suppliers that can meet their high standards. It's a complex puzzle with many pieces that just aren't fitting together smoothly yet. Now, let's shift our focus to Japan. Japan has been a major player in the semiconductor industry for decades. They've got the recipe down pat. The supply chain there is well established, with a strong network of suppliers and manufacturers. Everything TSMC needs, from raw materials to high-tech manufacturing equipment, is readily available and close by. To give you a better picture, imagine a conveyor belt system where everything is perfectly timed and positioned. Japan's semiconductor ecosystem is like this, everything runs smoothly and efficiently. Industry experts often point out that Japan's experience and established infrastructure make it much easier for companies like TSMC to hit the ground running. For example, Kenichiro Yoshida, the CEO of Sony, which is a key partner in TSMC's Japanese operations, mentioned in an interview how the collaboration benefits from Japan's advanced semiconductor infrastructure. This established system helps TSMC start production faster and more efficiently compared to the hurdles they face in the US. Let's talk about the skilled workforce shortage. In the US, finding enough skilled workers for semiconductor manufacturing is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. TSMC needs highly trained engineers and technicians, but the US simply doesn't have enough people with the right skills. This shortage slows down everything, from setting up the plant to starting production. Imagine showing up to a construction site with all the materials but not enough workers to actually build anything. That's the situation TSMC is facing. They've had to invest heavily in training programs to get local workers up to speed. Visuals of these training programs can show just how intensive and necessary these efforts are. Experts in the industry, like those from the Semiconductor Industry Association, often discuss how the US education system isn't producing enough graduates with the necessary STEM skills. Now, let's look at Japan. Japan has a strong tradition in engineering and manufacturing. It's like having a well-prepared team ready to go as soon as the project starts. The country has a robust education system that produces a steady stream of skilled workers. For TSMC, this means they can hit the ground running with a ready pool of talent. For instance, Kenichiro Takakura, an associate professor at Kumamoto College, mentioned that local graduates are well prepared for jobs in semiconductor manufacturing. This existing talent pool has been a huge advantage for TSMC. They don't have to spend as much time and money on training, which speeds up the whole process. Statistics back this up. Japan consistently ranks high in global education and skills indexes, especially in STEM fields. Success stories from TSMC's Kumamoto plant highlight how quickly they were able to start operations thanks to the local workforce. Now let's dive into the cost and financial incentives that TSMC faces in the US versus Japan. Starting with the US, it's like trying to build a house with gold-plated tools, everything is just more expensive. Labor costs in the US are significantly higher than in many other parts of the world. Skilled workers, while in short supply, also command higher wages. This adds a hefty chunk to the overall cost of setting up and running operations. Construction costs are another major hurdle. In the US, building a semiconductor plant involves a lot of expensive materials and advanced technology, which drives up costs even more. Add to this the high cost of compliance with stringent environmental and safety regulations, and it becomes clear why TSMC is facing financial challenges. Now, let's flip the coin and look at Japan. The Japanese government has gone out of its way to make TSMC feel welcome, offering substantial financial incentives. For instance, Japan provided a $3.16 billion subsidy to help cover the costs of TSMC's Kumamoto plant. That's like having a huge coupon for your shopping spree, significantly reducing the financial burden. On top of that, Japan's well-established infrastructure and supply chain mean TSMC doesn't have to spend as much on logistics and sourcing materials. This efficient ecosystem reduces operational costs further. In summary, while TSMC faces higher labor and construction costs in the US, Japan's generous financial incentives and lower costs create a more favorable environment for their operations. This difference in financial landscape plays a significant role in TSMC's smoother operations in Japan compared to the hurdles they face in the US. Now, let's talk about cultural and operational adjustments. TSMC is facing some real cultural barriers in the US. Think of it like trying to play a sport but with completely different rules. In the US, the business culture emphasizes individualism and competition, which can clash with TSMC's collaborative and hierarchical approach. This difference can create misunderstandings and slow down decision-making processes. Moreover, there's the challenge of integrating into the local community and workforce. In the US, unions play a significant role, and TSMC has had to navigate labor relations carefully. Building trust and developing good relationships with local trade unions has been essential but time-consuming. Contrast this with Japan, where the business culture is more aligned with TSMC's. Japan values long-term relationships, group harmony, and meticulous planning, which meshes well with TSMC's corporate culture. This cultural alignment makes it easier for TSMC to operate smoothly. The shared work ethic and approach to business reduce friction and help things run more efficiently. In Japan, TSMC also benefits from a well-established network of industry contacts and partners. This network is built on decades of mutual respect and cooperation, making integration into the local market much easier. The familiarity and mutual understanding between TSMC and Japanese firms facilitate smoother operations and quicker problem-solving. To wrap things up, TSMC is facing more hurdles in the US than in Japan for several reasons. In the US, they're dealing with complex regulations, a lack of skilled workers, higher costs, and cultural barriers. Each of these factors adds a layer of difficulty and slows down their progress. In contrast, Japan offers a more welcoming environment with strong government support, established supply chains, a skilled workforce, and a compatible business culture. These advantages help TSMC start operations more smoothly and efficiently. Looking ahead, TSMC will need to continue navigating these challenges in the US. They might focus on strengthening local partnerships, investing in training programs, and working closely with government and community stakeholders to smooth out the regulatory and operational issues. What do you think about TSMC's situation? Do you see more hurdles or opportunities for them in the US? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights on global tech trends.